agenda for tonight.
Nope, they're gonna push it out 2 weeks.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and open the planning commission meeting for March 7th at 6:30. Oh, March 7th, 2024. Rise for pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we will go over to Diane for a roll call.
Right, Planning Commissioner, Laura Wood,
Present.
Planning Commissioner Jamie Melcher,
I'm here.
Planning Commissioner Henry Wolthius, Commission Chair Jeffrey Parker,
Here.
Planning Commissioner Eva Journey, and Planning Commissioner Nancy White.
Present.
Thank you.
All right, so it's this portion of our meeting that's open to public comment. Anybody wishing to address the planning commission with things that are not on the agenda for this evening, this would be the time to do so. None, so we will go ahead and head on to a meeting minutes approval from the February planning commission. I was not here, so we'll leave it up to someone that was.
Unless there are other corrections, I would move that the minutes be approved.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes as they are written. We have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? I'm gonna abstain because I was not here, so I.
I am also.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let's just get right into the thick of it. So we've got continuation of the application SD 2301. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing for application SD 2301 at 6:32. Do you want me to go ahead and reread it, or do you want to? Okay.
No, so commissioners, since the last meeting, we had continued the hearing for subdivision 23-01 to this meeting. They requested a little extra time. Their engineer was not going to be in town, and they wanted to ask if they could continue it to the next meeting, which would be the 21st. So if you are agreeable to that, we just need a vote to continue it, and then we can close the hearing.
All right.
I would make a motion to continue application SD 23-01 to March 21st, 2024, as requested.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. I won't ask for opposed. All right. Find the back of this one. All right, so now, should I go ahead and close that public hearing for the vote? Yes. All right, so we're going to go ahead and look now at a land use approval extension of application PD 2201, SD 2201, and CU 2202. And we will open the public hearing at 6:34.
So this is a land use approval extension. You have the form in front of you submitted. They would like to explore modifications based on our new code. When this originally was put in, it was based on the code before October 27th, 2022, and they are exploring some new options based on our new code. So they would like an extension in order to allow them time to do that. And we do have the applicants here, so if you have any questions, otherwise it would just be a vote. If it's more than a year, the planning commission has to weigh in and vote on it, so.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for our applicants since they are in the room?
No, I think that's a very reasonable request.
Anything else? Questions for the applicant at all, Henry?
No.
No? All right, so I guess we'll just go ahead and vote on approval of the extension. Does anybody have a motion to approve?
Would close it. Close it.
Oh, I'm sorry. My brain is all foggy. So we'll go ahead and close the public meeting for the land use approval extension at 6:35 for discussion amongst the commission.
See no reason to not to extend it.
Okay. All right, so we just look for a motion at this point.
I make a motion to extend and use approval extension PD 22-01 /ST -22-01 /CU dot, what did I just say? -2202.
Okay.
I think I got it all.
You good, you did.
And I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we need to amend that motion to state the expiration date of 3/10/2026?
I think we're
I didn't-
I think
approving
you're
what was
approving the
before
form.
us.
If it-
Yeah.
The form?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're
The
approving the
dates
one
are-
before us, so,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
Have a tree in my binder. There we go. All right, so at that point, we're on to staff updates.
Thank you.
Yep. I'll make real quick, just the folks in the back of the room. So were you here to talk about the subdivision or? Yeah, so it looks like it's being extended to, for the next meeting. They've asked for one more extension on it to the 21st. So 6:30 in here on the 21st of this month. All right, you're welcome. I didn't want you to sit too much longer if you didn't need to. I mean, you're welcome to. It's riveting. Yeah. Yeah.
You want to sleep good today?
Yeah. It's like, wait a minute, we missed it. No, thank you for coming. All right. Staff updates. Looks like we need to vote on our chair, vice chair. And I had another question too, real quick. So we used to get the little survey about the ethics or something like that. Is that not? Yeah.
You should still be getting those, as far as I know. Have you not been receiving them?
Mm-mm. No, we used to get a
Did
big
you-
one at the end of the year about if there is any compensations and all that stuff.
Right. And as I I don't remember the timing of when that's supposed to go out, but it's supposed to be annually. So
Okay.
I
It is
believe it's in
okay.
March. So if you haven't received it yet this year, that's understandable.
Okay.
But if you, in the next month or two, if you don't get anything, let us know.
Okay, because I've gotten some basic survey stuff from them, but not the actual one where we have to log in and
Mm-hmm.
and do the whole rigmarole. All right. I just want to make sure I hadn't missed that as well.
Mhm.
I missed the last meeting. I could have missed that too. I do apologize for that, by the way. That was completely on me in my email. I blame Yahoo. So, yeah. All right. So it looks like we need to vote on chair and vice chair. I'm up for it if you guys are. If not, it's completely your choice.
I nominate Jeff Parker to be chairperson.
Second.
All right, there was a motion and a second. All those in favor,
Aye.
Aye.
opposed? I'm abstaining from that vote, so there we go. And we need to also look at a vice chair.
I make a motion that Laura Wood serve as the vice chair.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in
Okay.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. I got to vote on something. All right,
Sure.
congratulations. And I want to say, yeah. Yeah. I do want to say a big thank you to Henry and all the time that he's spent with our planning commission, and you're not going anywhere, right? You're just
I'm
changing roles.
still here.
Okay,
I've had such a difficult time hearing. I would announce that I've got new hearing aids coming from Costco. And hopefully I'll be able to do better. But we'll see. They should be here in a couple of weeks. But
yeah,
that's the reason why when you're sitting there as a co-chair
yeah,
and trying to communicate with Angela,
yeah, understandable.
who speaks so softly,
Yeah,
and the rest of the audience, it's difficult unless I can get my
Okay.
hearing up to speed.
understandable.
Yep.
Well, again, thank you for all the time you
You're
have
certainly
been right
welcome.
there.
Appreciate
I do
All of you
appreciate
are.
it.
Appreciate it.
All right. Anything else?
So on the topic of the makeup of the commission, we did finally get some applications for the vacant seat, and those should be interviewed soon.
And that is
So-
again appointed by city council.
Yes.
Great.
So 2 applicants, one of them will be chosen, so I'm just happy that we got some.
Awesome.
So tell us about what's going on downtown.
It's
Friends.
so as you well, you probably know as much as I do, but with some of the work. There are beautiful new windows in the old Masonic Lodge.
I saw that.
That's owned by Tony and Shelley Larson. They did a great job with those windows.
Yeah.
I really like them. I'm especially glad that they kept the transom windows above
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
too many
Yeah.
people
Just cover them up.
cover them up or put
Yep.
air conditioners in them. The
What are they doing with that building?
That's a good question. As far as I know, it will remain some sort of private event space.
Okay.
So the other one that you probably have noticed is the little shop where Shop of Wonders was.
Yep.
That is being remodeled. Carla Hogan, a local realtor, owns that. And so I know there are new windows going in, and there's a new awning already that's pretty much done almost. So that's about all I know on that one.
And the brewery next door.
What's that?
He seems to be pecking away at it next door to that one as well.
Where you mean the Peter Miners
Mhm.
place? I haven't noticed much change there, and I think that he has kind of pivoted and is going a different direction because originally it was going to be some sort of brew pub,
Mhm.
and then he switched to a brewery, and then he was going to do a distillery, and now I think he's going in a different direction entirely from that. So
Oh.
I don't know anything firm on that one. And I think with Carla Hogan's space, she was going to have her realty or her real estate office in there, but I believe her plan was to have something else in there as well. Not sure exactly what form that will take. And then there's talk of some others, but nothing that's in a official application yet.
Yeah, it's nice to see things happening.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if the paint is what spurred it on or
Hard
people
to
just
say.
finally wanting to do stuff, but
I know
really
with
nice.
with some of them that I'm aware of, it's just they've been wanting to for a long time, and just for some reason, and it's worked out now to do it.
I do
know.
think that things start snowballing. And
Oh, yeah.
it's like
absolutely.
when the neighbor mows the lawn and you look at your lawn, you're like, I better mow my lawn.
It's true. To the paint, those other.
Uh-huh.
buildings start to-
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we're glad for it. It'll be
It's
Yep.
really great.
fun to see things. Well,
So can I change the subject? So after the meeting last week, I went back and looked at our zoning language for land developments. I also found some old documents from the John Morgan Walt Wendelowski review from
2 years
17?
ago, yeah.
20
Way
before
back.
the times.
mhm.
And they had some language about chapter 17.48 related to things we talked about last week, which was there should be some language, and there isn't, about open space, parks, da 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 da. So I'm wondering if we could do that.
Because I know we had discussed at some point that we were gonna have a number that would trigger that green space or open space, whether it would be 12 lots, 20 lots. I know we had discussed it at one point and it just kind of,
We, during the, and during the, from what I recall, when we were going through all of the new code, that topic did come up.
Mhm.
And, as I recall, and this is based on top of my mind, what came up. As I recall, the discussion was we weren't sure what threshold would be appropriate,
right.
because we didn't want to chase away developers. And then the other item is that the way basically in lieu of requiring park dedication, the city has added park system development charges. So in other words, you kind of trade, in this case, when somebody's building a bunch of houses, instead of being, yes, we're not requiring them to give us land, but at the same time, they're paying us a fee that is based on parks and the impact that those new houses will have on parks. And so the way the mechanism is set up now, that fee can pay for land acquisition, park improvements and things like that.
Oh,
And that way it puts it in the city's control of being able to spend that money where it sees a need for a park, and doing it that way. But at the same time, it adds some flexibility because the applicant, if they wish to negotiate with the city and dedicate some parkland, and the city agrees to take it on, then they can get a credit off of their SDCs for all the homes built. And so that approach allows for a lot of flexibility and some negotiation rather than a firm requirement. So, and that is actually something that I did bring up with our applicant and they're open to as well. And so when we mentioned that every time we have a pre-application meeting with a developer of something that they want to do, it's something that we bring up almost every single time where, hey, if you've got land, we are very interested in taking that on and we'll credit off some fees to compensate you.
go ahead.
So yeah, I remember that we talked about this last time as well. And the downside is that the park may not be in the location that's available for the development that's happening because another party takes that money and puts it somewhere down the road. And, the timeliness of it also gets extended to whenever, however. And so I understand what you're saying about flexibility. But I'm concerned about some structure, and I guess that's the dilemma.
Yeah,
And
because I
that's
mean, what's the
perfectly fair.
distance? What's the distance from this development to the nearest city park?
Oh, it's a ways.
Not,
And-
yeah, not counting Hawthorne.
Yeah, and I will add
Which is
that
like
a
20
separate
something
effort,
or something.
from your efforts is the park system master plan. We're currently going through right now, and the Park and Tree Committee is pretty active in that. That plan is the goal of that plan is to make sure we are saying, okay, these are our different types of parks, neighborhood park, community park, et cetera. These are the amenities that we want in each one. And then have it actually a goal of how far should someone have to walk to get to a park? What distance, and make sure that we are covering as many, all the areas of the city that are not served by parks. And that particular area, the east side of Sweet Home has almost nothing.
Yeah.
Now, if you broaden it to say parks in general, not necessarily city-owned parks, well, then you've got Wiley Park and which our city manager would love to take on. But it's a matter of working with the Army Corps of Engineers and things like that. So there are things in the works with trying to make sure we have that coverage. And I get what you're saying. I think it depends on what's the threshold and what amount of space is appropriate. And we can certainly that there's no reason why that can't be reopened to determine if that's something we should look at.
I mean, obviously we've missed it on this one, but I guess my understanding with the parks portion of the SDCs was that was to help offset the labor adding to the Parks Department to take care of that park, not
Nope.
to trade.
That is not, the SDC does not pay for labor, does not
Okay.
pay for operations. It pays for
Acquisition.
capital improvements.
Okay.
Capital, so it pays for stuff that we've already put in and took on debt to pay for. So that other people coming in can pay that latecomer thing, but it also pays for planned future improvements. So that's why that Parks Master Plan is so important, is it's going to it's identifying these projects of these are all the things that we need to build to meet demand, and we're going to have them all adopted as for our capital projects list, and that way they will all be eligible for that SDC money to spend on it. And the size of the SDC is going to be based on what those projects
Mm.
actually are.
So the other concern was kind of related to the open space thing about I foresee a lot of children in this development, however it gets developed. And where do they play? They play in the street. Well, you know, that's not particularly ideal. So we have no provision in our plan development code for community space like that. And
By community space, you're meaning parks, right?
Yeah.
Is there any other
Yeah.
community space besides that we haven't already?
Well, versus a gated communities, public space versus anything open to the outside
so,
public.
yeah, that brings up the issue of so there are wetlands on this property, which are not buildable.
Depending on
Yeah,
what the
right.
state comes back
Okay,
with.
so
Yeah.
let's hypothesize and say there are some wetlands upon which it will not be allowed to have houses. Is that going to be open space, de facto open space for the development? I don't know that there's an answer.
Oh, I think there is an answer to that question. Every development we've had where there has been wetlands identified that can't be built on, it has basically been open space. It's I think the Duck Hollow subdivision over here is a perfect example. They've got wetlands in the area, and it's been divided up into its own parcel, and it's owned by the HOA for that development. And that's essentially how it would work out for any space that they have. You know, if in this, and it's not unusual for a subdivision to come back with a revision after they have worked with the Department of State Lands on this. The Duck Hollow Phase 3 did the exact same thing, and it's still not started.
Right.
So,
Right?
but that's not just DSL, that's the market and other things like that. But honestly, with this one, if there's portions that are not buildable, they're going to have to go into something that's owned by someone, some party. And an HOA is really the ideal way for that to happen. The Duck Hollow folks would rather not own them because they don't want to maintain them. They don't want to take care of them. They see them as a liability.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I'm sorry, that's what you signed up for when you bought into that development.
Right.
The city, and of course they want the city to take it on. Well, what's the city going to do with it? You know, we can't use it as parkland because it's a wetland that can't be built on, and we can't fill it in. And so yes, it's open space, which is desirable, but the city doesn't take that on because then it just transfers that liability over to the city, it's basically making all the taxpayers in the entire city responsible for something that should be a neighborhood thing. So in this one, they certainly are going to do something similar. Now, when it comes to parkland being dedicated, I did suggest to them as an incentive that, hey, if you want to give us some parkland and get those SDC credits, fine. We are also willing to take on adjacent wetland areas that would be a part of that park. So that you could, as long as we have a developable portion of that park, then we'll take it. And that way we can incorporate the wetland into the design of the park and put like a loop path around it or something like that and have a lovely park. You know, that makes sense.
So I just want to make sure everybody's clear. Wetlands aren't necessarily it's not that you cannot build on them. there is development that is allowed on a wetland, and it will depend on what is proposed on the wetland and also mitigation standards. So they can mitigate to trade. So there's a lot of you can't build on wetlands. That's not true. You can, it just depends on what it is. So I want to be clear that everybody
Right.
understands that it's not restricted to where you
Sure.
can't do anything on that. So,
Yeah.
because I
it-
hear that all
yeah.
the time and everybody freaks out and it's
It's-
just like, no, you can. There is development that is allowed, but it has to be approved. There's other mitigation standards.
It's a very good point. But what
Mhm.
typically ends up happening is there are parts of it that are
Yes.
mitigated and there's parts of it that are left alone.
And it's a bargaining tool. It's a very good bargaining.
Yeah,
tool.
and I get what you're saying too. Like if they were to donate, say, an adjacent lot to the wetland, not only have they helped out the development, but they've also now don't have to take care of the wetland because it's
Because
part
now
of that
somebody else
park.
owns it.
yeah.
And as long as we can put a path around it,
Mhm.
with some
Right.
benches, then it makes it a usable park space that we would like to enjoy. And,
Yeah.
folks can take a nice walk.
And if you don't mind, I was going to take one more step back. We got off on wetlands. So we didn't used to have landscaping criteria whatsoever. But with this code that we updated, so we do now have it to where there are minimum requirements for multifamily developments, mixed use developments, commercial, industrial, and expansions. We didn't used to have any of that. So we have put in some landscaping and it depends on which one it is, whether it's got to be 25%, 15%. So the only ones we don't are subdivisions of planned developments. And so but all other categories that would have multiple, higher density on it, we do have landscaping criteria. So we did catch it in some of those other ones. So I just wanted,
So do we-
because we didn't before, because Joe and I used to always say, how come we don't have landscaping plans?
Well, do we want to catch it now in this plan development section?
Well, it has to go through the whole code update process, which we're actually getting ready to submit another one so we can do that, but it'll be a few months before we
Yeah.
get that.
So what I would suggest, if this is an area that you want to make adjustments to the code to, I think there's a couple ways we could handle it. I would suggest having some sort of commission workshop to go over options and to specifically talk over in a less formal setting than a regular commission meeting, but a kind of a workshop where we can sit around a table and talk freely about different options for accomplishing what you would like to accomplish. Giving staff a bit more direction on things that you'd like us to research and bring to you at a workshop like that would help. So that we can say, okay, what do we mean by community space? What do we mean by open space? What kind of designs are we interested in seeing? What are the size thresholds? How many lots should trigger something like this? Honestly, when it comes to this latest subdivision, this one took me by surprise with the size of it. I was not expecting anyone to put in an application for 100 and how many total?
61.
160 lots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've, has Sweet Home ever seen that big of a development? Not at once. And this wouldn't be at once. It would be phased over time and everything like that.
Based
But-
on sales, yeah.
but it's and there's there would be a lot to it. But the thing that makes the only analog I can see in our files is some of the plans that the plans for what is now Troy Cummins property.
Right.
There was a big plan development all worked out. At one point it was a golf course and then it
Mhm.
merged into other things, and there was a huge amount of open space and lots of amenities involved in that. Because it was that planned development style, But even then, that wasn't, from what I can tell, that wasn't mandated by the city. That came down from their vision of what
Right.
they wanted to do.
Right.
And we've promoted planned developments as an option for developers that way too. But it's really a new thing for us. So, what is the threshold? Is 100 lots a threshold? Is 50
and-
lots a threshold?
I was thinking about that too, about the number of lots versus, it's tough because if you say the number of lots that triggers it is 20, well, then there's no stopping them from going back and readjusting it. Now it's only 19 lots. So I
Like
think
it
it would
needs to
have
be
to be more,
acreage.
more of an acreage situation, just to get away from
Like if
that.
it covers this much land, if you're building on this much land.
Right.
It needs to have at least this percentage.
Yeah, the acreage of usable land,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have.
Well,
to tax
that's
them
that's
with
the other part is
wetland.
that it would be some sort of net acreage because you got to take out space for streets. You got to take out space for the unbuildable wetland
Right.
or sloped areas or something like that that aren't usable. But at the same time, those areas are great for open space. So should those count
So
hard to
to
say.
me,
Mhm.
this application, is just,
Maximum.
I don't want to feel unprepared the next time this happens.
Hmm.
So let's get her done. Let's
Yeah.
have a meeting.
Yeah, we missed out on the last one and then this one snuck up on us.
Yeah, I think it would be valuable to us for the process. And I think also for like the citizens who live around a plan development, to see those kinds of things in the plan.
Mhm.
Because on the commission, I understand that the city government, has plans for parks and they have all these things that they want to do and they're waiting on funding, and developments like this put an influx of funds that allow you to do those types of things. But to the average person in town, it seems like bureaucracy, and the money's going away from their community, and their community, their quality of life, they see it as going down with all these new things and not a lot of new facilities for them to use. And then the city saying, well, we're making money off of it, so you'll see it eventually. And that's kind of where, people start to feel like they're pushing back because they don't see it or it doesn't end up in their area. And so I do think it would be valuable to put something, especially.
And it makes us,
Something that's
it makes us look bad because we didn't do our due diligence in looking forward, which is one of our goals that we've said we want to do for the city. We want to have a vision. So here's a chance.
And I can just imagine a neighborhood, a subdivision of this size with some small parks inside of it, whether it's one or two, or, there's a portion of that required development area. I think it would be more appealing, at least to me as a home buyer. It would be more appealing, with a young family to go and have a space where I know my kids aren't playing in the street, or they're only, 2 blocks away at the park or something of that nature. I know that's my opinion on it, as far as a home buyer.
Well,
But-
just remember, you, as a planning commission, you can recommend conditions of approval above and beyond what we recommend. So you can recommend conditions of approval based on criteria and based on their testimony and the staff report. So we have recommended conditions of approval, but you can add to those. You can delete the ones that we put in. You can modify the conditions of approval. So keep that in mind also when you're reviewing the staff report and all of the materials. So
Yeah, and I think having something though, if we can get to it, that's in black and white, that when they go to apply for the application, they know that based on the size of their application, that they're gonna already have, and it won't take them by surprise when they come and think they're getting 160 lots when now they're getting 155 based on square footage.
Blair was surprised of the size of this, and I don't blame you. I think we all were. But when I've looked through this, it looks like every bit of it, including the wetlands, all have lots designated, with the exception of, I think there's 3 stormwater retention areas. And then that brings up another question for those. Management, landscape, no landscape, fencing, no fencing, all these questions that come up when you have a storm retention area. So anyway, those were just some of my concerns. I just see that they've designated every square foot they could for a lot.
Well, and rightfully so. I mean, they're in it to make money, and I understand that. But there is a trigger for those retention ponds. I mean, as far as developable acres to
Yeah.
the retention ponds. So
There's a reason they're the size they are.
right,
and
and
the
on that
locations
same kind of formula, maybe using something similar to help delineate green space or open space.
Yeah. So I will say, and I think it's important to note here, developing something of this size is abhorrently expensive. It is extremely expensive. And this is not a big corporation applying for it. This is a mom and pop shop, basically. And so it's important to keep things in perspective. It sounds huge to us, but the margins are not as big as we would expect them to be when it comes to actually, and it's also very uncertain. And so I'm mindful of, you know, the amount of risk that it may be putting on a developer because we don't, I will say, these are exactly the kind of developers we want to attract to Sweden.
Right.
Compared to other folks that we have worked with, and compared to other developers, they have been very good to work with, and they have really wanted to do the right thing by the city. Everything that is in their application, while if you go through all of it and look at the reasons for why it's there, it's all there because it was in our code. Now, and so I don't fault them for the application at all that they.
No.
And I just wanted to go on record with that, but I think that we could probably arrive at some requirements. There's some recommendations that could really work out well. Again, it all comes down to, you know, what are the thresholds? What's frustrating to me is seeing the folks put such a risk that they're taking on by building housing and not seeing the price of land reflect that. It's really difficult to make money off of something like this with the amount that's being asked for the land, given how much needs to be done to the land to make it into something sellable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're looking at
It's
standard
very
right
raw.
now.
And it's frankly, the cost of land, in my opinion, is way out of whack.
Well, and you talked about investment, you know, you're looking at for basic street structure of a 30-foot street, it's $1 million a mile.
Mhm.
So there's a huge amount of money that goes into it before they can even turn around and sell a lot.
Right. So I just want to make sure that's in your minds when we're thinking about requirements that we ask of folks, to make sure that we're doing something that can easily be phased up or is sized appropriately for the size of the development. I think that we can find something.
Yeah, and being reasonable about it, like you
Sure.
said, is the same thing, you know, they're not gonna have the money out of pocket to sacrifice a lot, maybe in phase 1, but maybe at the end of phase 2, the beginning of phase 3.
Well,
might be something.
we have a lot of empty storefronts in town, and we want businesses to come into those storefronts and
We need
to attract
We need
businesses.
customers, yeah.
We need parking.
You need to have housing. And I've watched all the apartment buildings that have been built in the last, year and a half. They're filled up before they're done.
Mhm.
We need housing, and we need reasonable housing. And I just feel like we really need to work with this developer and reach compromises where we can to get what, I guess you would say, what we think it should be compared to what they can afford, what they can do.
Do we anticipate they're going to come back with a revised plan?
I just know they're working on it.
Okay.
And in fact, just earlier, I talked with Levi about some information he'd gotten from their engineer about traffic impact study, because that's one of the things that came up.
Mhm.
And so
That's not true either.
I know there's going to be more information on that. It's definitely not reasonable to expect an actual full traffic impact study before approval.
Not in that
But
short
but
timeframe.
they'll at least have some more information on what that'll look like. I haven't heard anything concrete about any revisions and what they would look like. But I have talked with one of the owners, and she made it clear that they were going over all sorts of possibilities. And I put it out there that we were looking for parkland in that area, and how SDCs work and everything like that. And she said that they would take that all into account. So
That's good.
we're hoping that helps get us to yes, and
And
see what
their-
they come back with.
Their engineer said if they do make any changes, they will have the changes to me by next week.
Oh,
So
Great.
if they do, either that or they will keep the plans the same and then just discuss alternates. I don't know what option they're going to go with, but when I spoke to him, that's the direction they were going right now. So
In the past, we've had people submit multiple options, and we'll see what we can get.
and I would love to see if we can find any kind of verbiage about parkland requirements from any other communities. see if there's anything out there.
Somebody else.
I mean,
got
this is
something.
41 acres. I don't know.
Why don't we
Looked at 15.
Why don't we do
20?
this? Why don't we have staff research some areas, some ways that this has been done effectively?
Mhm.
See what we can find when it comes to other communities in Oregon. Hopefully communities that are analogous to our size.
Right.
And see what they have, see what's worked. Given staff workloads and everything, I'd want some time to get back to you on that. So if we could have probably what, a month to get back to you on some options. And then we can kind of present some of our, basically get a packet of our findings to you. And then based on that, if you'd like to have some sort of workshop, we can schedule one at that point.
So we don't have any business scheduled for the first meeting in April, so we could do a workshop on that first meeting on the 4th, April 4th. So there's just an option, because right now we don't have any business stated for that.
Too tight of a
Let's, do we have business?
We don't have business
We have
on the
business for
18th.
21st, right?
Yeah.
Why don't we revisit this topic at the end of the meeting on the 21st, and we can let you know where we are with what we've found and how much time we're gonna need. And we'll see if
Okay.
April 7th or 4th. We'll see if
It'd
April
be the
4th
4th
at
or
that
the
point is a
18th.
feasible date to have something.
Now, in fairness to him, Hutchins, you know, he needs to know what we're thinking. And of course, you are the intermediary to reflect all of that. But I'd also express a concern that, you know, a project of this size, it comes to our meeting and all of a sudden we're supposed to approve or disapprove, or even 2 meetings. That doesn't give us time to really think through the project. Of course, we can read the materials, but we probably all have some creative ideas that could go into it. And
So-
I just kind of feel a little awkward to have some project presented like this and say, okay, well, tonight you approve it or you don't approve it.
So I think it's important to reflect on what the role here is of the planning commission. When it comes to creative decisions on how something is designed, it's a little bit beyond what the city really should be doing. We have requirements, we have goals, we have things that the city requires when it comes to public safety, access into land. And we're going to be looking at design standards for downtown. That's a topic that's been brought up with the council, architectural standards and things like that. I guess what I'm saying is we need to be careful how far we stray into that realm, because it does get into more of a decision that really is the property right of the applicant and the owner.
I realize that, but after it's done, if it isn't partly what we'd like to have seen, it's too late. And
Well, yeah, but it's not about what we want to see. It's about whether it fits. It's about whether it follows the city's
Well,
requirements.
we can develop all these homes and they can meet all the criteria of the city. But usually we could improve upon that.
Well, and I think that's where it comes back to the requirements that we're talking about for the parks. to look
Making
at-
modifications to our code.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is
So that
changing
we
that
have
so that
authority
they
to
are
do that.
spelled out. when
Right.
somebody
Well,
makes
because
it
right
versus-
now, what do we have in our rules? When you have a subdivision and you have people arranging lots, the main things we look at are things like how wide are the streets? What's the spacing of the blocks?
of the driveway.
What's the we actually don't even go into driveways, I think. I mean, we have rules on how far driveways can be apart from each other. But
Right.
for the approval of the subdivision itself, it doesn't include the
No.
driveways. That's a
Yeah.
building thing later. And so you're looking at the lot sizes, the general shape of the lot. You're looking at how far it is to the next block, all of those things. And those are all very clear standards that we have in our code, that we can we have clear reasons for why they are the way they are, this is bound to be safer to have this width of a street and so forth. Beyond that, and I get parkland, that's certainly something that we've talked about a lot today, and I think can be added. But beyond those things, I guess the question is, how far should the city go in having a creative input into how things are going? I mean, we require street names to go. We have a street naming convention that they have to comply with. But I mean, if you look at some big subdivisions in places that I'm familiar, at least, I have a lot of family in Arizona, and if you look at them from the air, they've got like a design with the streets and everything like that. You want to go so far as to curvature of the streets and stuff like that? That's certainly a creative choice, but it seems to me to be a bit beyond what is really our role.
In Arizona, sometimes they have to build schools
Yeah.
as part of their subdivision plat.
Yeah, so they don't overburden the system.
They have to build a school.
So that
Right,
was,
but those are also massive subdivisions that are
Massive.
thousands of lots.
Yep.
So they're basically the size of Sweet Home
Yep.
by themselves.
so that was a dilemma for me because basically the applicant had done everything required in our code. And we coulda, shoulda approved it last time because they did it right. And that's what we agreed to in being a commissioner was it's not about our personal opinion. It's about did the applicant meet all the criteria? So
Questions about traffic
Well, I was-
safety and circulation and
Yeah,
fire safety of those lots. If things didn't get developed the way they were planned, where those streets were going to be headed, did people have, proper fire exits, and could the fire trucks get through? If, phase 4 didn't complete and send the roads all the way through, then how were people evacuating if they needed to? Like, those things are still a concern in a big project like this that may or may not see itself fully completed.
So, and I wanted to let you guys know also, so one of the things is, Henry, and I think this, is that the state, we have a certain amount of time we have to get these done. We have 120 days from the day we say it's complete. That's usually a lot of time. But when it comes to subdivisions and plan developments, not always, because we've had to. You all are allowed to continue also. You can vote to continue it to have more time to review if you like, not just the applicant. You all can vote to say, hey, we need more time. We're in agreement. We don't. So you are all allowed to continue it, and we can bring it at another time. So if you don't feel like you're getting enough time to review something this big, then you can bring that as a motion to continue it to a future one. Just always keep in mind that we have that 120-day criteria. Now that can get extended, but it has to get extended by the applicant. And so we have to keep that in mind if they're willing to extend it. So there's just laws. And so, but it does give us plenty of time. We hardly ever run over that time, but it is something to consider when we are talking about continuations and needing more time. You're allowed to have more time, and you guys are allowed to vote on that. So I just wanted to make sure in case you weren't aware, you are allowed to do that. So
just to make it clear what the direction to staff is and what we're looking for, what we're going to investigate and research is strictly going to be open space and park requirements, and what other cities have when it comes to thresholds and what their requirements look like. Is there any other aspect that you think needs to be examined also when we're looking at subdivisions?
I think that and the basic traffic flows and things like that, but we kind of already have code in place for those.
So with traffic flow, that's already in our code now.
Correct.
No,
And
that
for-
was, my comment was more specifically
with
about,
the phasing.
yeah, we talked
Mhm.
about some
Yep.
hammerheads that were going to be the temporary ends of streets during different phases. And then, we mentioned that because of the wetlands, it's very possible that there will be portions of this that won't be developed as planned. And that means that there may be some weird street ends and things like that. And our code does ask them to take topography of the land that they're developing into account. And I think that falls under something that we can consider.
And that's
Yeah.
something that you could tell them, you have as a condition of approval now without changing our code, that you can specify, look, we are concerned about circulation in your phases. And we would like each phase to be designed in such a way that you have full circulation without it being going on to the next phase. And I think that's something that they could put their heads together and find a design that works and does that.
Because I have seen subdivisions do that between phasing where they'll put in a temporary cul-de-sac or a hammerhead that's in the next phase.
Yeah.
And the fire department has to sign off on the fact that it's usually not hard surfaced, it's gravel.
Right.
So that they're not investing
Well,
too much money in it.
And the hammerheads they had in this one are that, you know,
Mhm.
they satisfied the fire district's requirements for fire district access. But I think what Commissioner Wood is referring to more is the circulation of the residents, you know, looking at if this phase never moved on to the next phase, is it usable by the residents there for circulation? And I
Right.
think that's a fair question. And I think that's something that that our current code allows for you to explore.
Okay.
You know, I'm just babbling. I apologize for that, but I know of and have seen many areas where development has to be developed up to a point before they can continue. You know, if you're taking farmland, you know, sometimes people have waited for years for sewer and water to get down to their property or roads. And I'm not suggesting that we delay it, but sometimes we get the cart before the horse. And obviously we need some road work on 43rd. Absolutely. And answers to traffic. It just, you know, it's just overwhelming that all of a sudden here's 150 houses and we don't have the link to the city completed.
Well, that's what the traffic impact study is for.
Yeah, but that's later.
After approval of the subdivision, yes. But the thing is,
But
it's
prior
not-
to development.
it's prior to development. It's after approval, but it's before houses are built.
Before development?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, sorry. No, if you're doing a traffic impact study, you're not going to get a building permit until that's done. For any of that.
All right.
So yeah, they got to do that first.
Okay.
Now, that traffic impact study will identify what needs to be built and whether there's enough current infrastructure to meet the need. And usually, you know, if there isn't, they're going to specify, okay, this road needs to be widened. This intersection needs to be fully developed, may require signalization or something like that. All that's going to be laid out in the traffic impact study. Actual construction of those improvements could be concurrent with the building of the homes, but it's all a part of the same project.
All right.
You need to sign those.
Okay. I look forward to seeing what you guys come back with the next meeting.
We'll try to have more information in a couple weeks and then on at least how much time we're going to need.
And I think a workshop to be able to go over it and discuss it would be a really good idea.
Yeah, kind of like we did for the food cart
Yeah.
edition, where we looked at different
Sure.
things and saw what we liked.
All right.
All right.
Well, if there's nothing further. From November? November? February. Okay,
Oh, it's just a signature this.
I'll get it. Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I'd like to thank all the commissioners for coming and spending your time helping us out. We appreciate it. And we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and the planning commission meeting for March 7th, 2024 at 7:24. Huzzah. And I had quite a few people texting me about
Thanks
bathrooms
for your input.
at food carts. I thought that was the only requirement when it was a pod. Yeah.
Yeah, it did identify some areas in our code where it's not as clear as it should be. And we've talked about that already.
It was for